Okay. So that's really a bummer that I had to do this already. I didn't even get into the topic yet. So hopefully I don't have another backup stream. So hopefully I'll have a chance to actually get to my topic and get through it before it cuts me off. It seems like it's always got to, somebody's always got to be cutting me off on YouTube or it's the internet. Like last time, the internet. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do my greeting and get right to the topic. And I'll probably delete the original stream since um, there wasn't a whole lot of anything. I don't know. I might leave it. We'll see. I might just change the title on it. Okay, so hello everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Sorry that yet again YouTube has booted me, and thankfully I had a backup stream, but like I said, I don't have another backup stream. Not that I can't start another one if it happens again. So I'm praying that it leaves me on here long enough that I can get through this topic. So storing, preserving meats, blah blah blah. Take one. Take two, excuse me. Take two. See, I have to even use this on myself because I don't even know where I'm at. I'm so confused. So I'm going to just mostly talk about what I do, but I do have videos linked in the description that will be helpful, such as, dehydrating meats and so on and so forth. Now, I have yet to do a video on freezing meats and how I do it, but I've talked about it here and there. I just don't have a standalone video about freezing meats. So whenever we butcher, we get an elk or a deer, which doesn't happen very often. Patrick just does not always have a lot of time to go hunting, but if he does and we get one, then yes, I will use freezer paper. I made the mistake one year of using butcher paper. And if you use butcher paper, you got to use some kind of plastic wrap. Some people will use plastic wrap with their freezer paper, but if you get good freezer paper, there's no need for plastic wrap. But it's a matter of just, I find that freezer paper, when the meat is properly wrapped, it'll last in your freezer for years without getting freezer burnt. Never had issues with properly wrapped. It's better than food saver plastic that can sometimes get holes in it, and then it fills up with air and then it gets freezer burnt. So, or maybe it just didn't seal properly because your food saver decided to stop working properly. Because I had a lot of that happening, and I just finally said, I'm done with this. Now, even though we try to avoid plastics as much as possible, I will say that when I can't think what you could have said wrong. Oh, I didn't say anything wrong, Rebecca. It just keeps, I get booted for, it's something on YouTube's end. And it happens to me a lot. It didn't happen at first, and all of a sudden it started happening like a lot, almost every show it seems. But at any rate, not everyone. Um, so I do, when I buy meat, like from Butcher Box or something, it is already shrink wrapped into plastic and it's frozen. I just store it in the freezer like that. Other than the fact that it's plastic, I don't have any problems with it. It stays preserved quite well. No freezer burn, no matter how many years it stays in there, just like the properly wrapped freezer paper meat. Um, let's see. The thing is, someone would say, well, why not repackage it and get it out of the plastic? Well, because it would be pointless. It's already frozen in there and it's not going to get any worse. Okay. It's already frozen in the plastic. So it's not going to get any worse because it wouldn't make sense to thaw it out. You'd have to, well, you wouldn't have to thaw it out, but to take that plastic off and then wrap it. And it would be hard to wrap it too in a frozen form. You'd want to do that right away to have it as airtight as possible. So if something is thawed, you got to thaw it, or fresh meat, and you're wrapping it in your freezer paper, it's going to get a much better seal around that meat. You're not going to have any air gaps, or less likely to. So when I freeze with the freezer paper, I usually lay it out. This is how I do it personally, like where it's like a diamond shape, right? And I put the meat in the corner here and I'll fold it over a couple times, then take the ends and fold them in, and then finish rolling it out, and then just put a piece of masking tape on that corner so it stays. No issues with it like that. So now freezing, obviously, when we're talking about storage for long term, may not always be the best. I mean, if again, if it's properly wrapped, it can last for many years without issue. But when you're looking at possible power outages and whatnot, long-term power outages, a lot of people are like, man, I need a better method than just freezing all the meat, because if I lose power and I don't have a generator, I don't have a solar backup or whatever, then I either got to cook all this meat up and or can it all up, or I'm going to lose it all. So obviously, yeah, egg roll wrapped. There you go. Um, you got to have backups. You got to have backup plans. So even if you can't afford to put in some kind of solar setup, which is totally understandable, because even though the cost of putting in a solar setup has gone way down, even since we first started, it's still an expense that a lot of people can't afford. It might even still be an expense to purchase some kind of gas or diesel generator as a backup. On top of that, it takes fuel to run it, and that can be expensive. Um, we do have several generators. We've got one that we bought new years and years ago. It's been a great generator. It's a Honda, I think 3000, or is it more than that? We initially bought it to run the air conditioner in our camp trailer when we go on our family vacations, but and other such things that we needed it for. But the now it's our generator. The thing I love about it is a quiet generator. It's very, very quiet. While when a power outage happens around here, you can hear generators pop going on all over the place, and the neighbors right next door, theirs is really loud, but you wouldn't be able to hear ours. Um, you can if you go into the shop, you can hear it outside of the shop, but like in the house, you really can't even hear it. So, but it's still a good idea if you can afford it to at least get some kind of generator. However, you need to still have backup plans. Like, do you have okay, let's see, what am I trying to say? Well, knowing how to can and dehydrate that meat, cook it up and dehydrate it, all that kind of stuff is going to be important, because you may have to get busy and start canning meat. So canning is a really great way to put up pretty much any kind of meat. I have one year when Patrick went fishing with his dad, and they brought back a whole bunch of salmon, and his dad gave him his catch too. I had a lot of salmon to put up, and so I canned it, and that was several years ago, and it's still great. It's really good. So I have canned salmon, I have canned beef, I haven't canned turkey. I just haven't seen the need to do it, but I have canned chicken just to try it. Um, that's not something I normally do with chicken or turkey, but definitely beef. Usually what I do is I take roasts and just chop them up, throw them in the jar with some water and a little salt, can them up. Meat, actually, some people are afraid to can meat, but it's one of the easiest things to do. I just raw pack it. I don't bother cooking it, because it's going to get cooked in the canning process. Because like for a quart jar, it's 90 minutes. For a pint jar, it's 75 minutes. And if it's fish, it's 110 minutes, no matter the size of your jar. But it's a very easy, fast way, well, somewhat fast, to put up meat, because you just chop it up, put it in there, filled up with some water, get your air bubbles out, a little salt, other seasonings if you want. I usually don't do that. I try to keep my stuff simple so I can use it however I want. I've canned hamburger, ground beef. I've canned that. And I've canned homemade meatballs. I love that. I love that I have canned homemade meatballs in case I really don't have any ideas for dinner. Maybe I have a lot of extra. It doesn't take long to make up some kind of white sauce to go with it, or any sauce, any kind of gravy you want. And then I'll just open up a jar. Usually what I'm doing is that, if I'm making biscuits and gravy, I'll take whatever excess gravy I have, or other types of gravies where it's got that similar type of herbs that I'm going to use in there for flavor. And I'll freeze the extra. I just keep adding it to the same bowl. And then when I have one of those nights where it's like, oh, I don't know what to do for dinner. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll pull out a jar of homemade home canned meatballs and pull out that white sauce that's already ready to go. I just got a thought, and then heat it all up together in a pan and then serve it over rice, or you can serve it over pasta. It's really good. Or you can use the meatballs in like spaghetti, spaghetti and meatballs, whatever you want to use them in. So I've heard of, I haven't done this, but some people can meatloaf. And what else have I canned as far as meat goes? Maybe that's about it. Then one of my other favorite methods is to dehydrate, but depending on the meat itself is going to depend on how I dehydrate. Now, if you're wanting jerky, then what you're going to do is you're going to take your raw meat, cut it up, and you're going to marinate it for at least 12 hours. I usually just do it early in the day, leave it in the fridge until the next day sometime, periodically going through and stirring it up. So I'm making sure that marinade is getting really well into the meat. Then you can use your dehydrator. I've never actually made jerky on an electric dehydrator. I always, if I'm going to do it, I do it in the wintertime and do it on top of my wood stove where it's going to cook and dry at the same time. Now that's jerky. That's a chewy meat. That's something you're not going to want to necessarily add that to cooking unless you can get it dry enough to powder it, because otherwise it's going to stay chewy. There's no amount of rehydrating for something like that that's going to get it to a point where it's not chewy. This goes also with chicken and turkey. Even chicken and turkey that have been cooked and then you try to dehydrate them, they stay very, very chewy. You can usually powder them, but they'll stay chewy and they won't, like, I've tried using pieces like that in like a chicken a la king or turkey a la king, and it stayed very chewy no matter how long I cooked it. And then with ground beef, what I do is I brown it and then strain out. I don't rinse it anymore. I did that the first time and I said, never doing that again. I just strain out the excess fat, but I don't try to rinse all that fat out of there, and then dehydrate it and vacuum seal it into a jar. As long as it stays vacuum sealed, you don't have to worry about that fat going rancid. The dehydrated ground meats can be used they're really great for adding to soups and sauces. Some people will rehydrate them in hot water and then use them in tacos. I haven't actually tried that, but what else? I mean, anything that where you're gonna cook some kind of liquid, some kind of gravy, some kind of sauce, soup, etc. You just throw it in there and it will rehydrate as it's cooking in with that sauce or that soup. So so that's when it comes to ground meats, that works really well for a lot of stuff. Now, when you're talking about dehydrating meats in any other form, though, and you're not wanting jerky, then at that point, I'm going to bring this up for the 100th time because I talk about it a lot because it was such a game changer when I found this out by accident that once you've cooked that meat, you freeze it. So you've got leftover turkey, you've got leftover chicken, you've got leftover roast, you've got leftover fish or leftover corned beef, anything that you've cooked and you've been eating on it. And now you've got all this leftover meat. Take that leftover cooked meat. This is key. Freeze it for a couple of days just to make sure it gets frozen all the way through. Take it out, thaw it just enough where you can spread it out on your drying trays and then dry it. Now, in that case, I do always use the dehydrator. I could probably dry it next to the wood stove just fine, but I try not to do a lot of stuff on top of my wood stove because it takes so much space. It makes it kind of a hassle. So if you got coffee and tea and you're doing something, you're making dinner on there, it's a pain because that big rack is in the way. But if your wood stove or whatever is open enough where it's not going to get in the way, then yes, you could dry that on your wood stove. The difference of the cooking, freezing, and then dehydrating, the difference it makes to the meat is amazing. is easily it powders up easily, it rehydrates beautifully, it's very crispy, it's very light, it's not hard and chewy the way other meat is. Now, the same applies to anything that's been pressure canned. So let's say you have a whole bunch of pressure canned meat in your pantry and you want to start making more space because now you're gardening, you got your beans coming in, your carrots, whatever things that you want to can. And you're like, I need to get some of this meat out of here and have it take up less space. Well, since it was already pressure canned, pressure canning or pressure cooking does the same thing to the meat as cooking and then freezing does. And so you can dehydrate that straight out of the jar. Just strain out the excess liquid, throw it on your dehydrating racks or trays, your silicone trays, and then let it dry and it'll turn out the same way as the other method. So I've done both where I've taken meats out, salmon, beef out that I've canned and then just strained it out, dehydrated it, turned out great. So either method will work for dehydrating when it comes to that. So really when it comes to dehydrating meat, it's a great way to put up meat. In fact, it's probably the oldest way to put up meat to get somebody through a year. We know the Native Americans did that. We know in your Nordic countries, they did that with their fish. They would hang it to dry even in the frozen places they were at. They have racks. Still today, you can go to Norway and see the racks where they would dry the fish. And that's how they would put it up. So it's the oldest method. Dehydrating meat, some people try to say it's not that safe. Well, that's what they did for years, long before pressure canners were invented. Long, long before that. So, but a lot of times they're going to end up with jerky type meat. But if you're, again, since we have the ability to cook, freeze, and then dehydrate, now we can end up with a meat that can be used for a lot more things and in a lot more things. But I mean, jerky's great too, though. We love jerky. And like I said, if it's dry enough that you can powder it, then you can still add it to soup, sauces, and more. You just won't get those pieces of meat. Like in that pot pie I was talking about in my earlier live, I had the chunks of the beef roast in there. So dehydrating is something I'm going to do if I have a lot of leftover meat, typically from turkey, because you end up with a lot of meat from your turkey. And you might make a few meals and you're like, okay, I'm kind of getting tired of this turkey. I'm just going to go ahead and freeze it. In fact, I just pulled a bag out of the freezer the other day and used half of it to make a turkey a la king. And the rest of it, I'm going to dehydrate up and then put up. Unless I come up with another idea, because I am thinking maybe instead about using the rest of that and making a turkey sandwich spread and then making some loaf bread. I might do that instead. But since it was already frozen, cooked and then frozen, I can also decide to just dehydrate it. So canning and dehydrating are really great ways to put up various meats that are going to have long-term shelf life, as long as whether it's dehydrated or canned, as long as your jars don't lose their seals, they'll stay good for years and years. Okay, they should last indefinitely. Where in the freezer, they may or may not get freezer burnt depending on how well they're wrapped. Or if your freezer dies on you or you lose power, then you have to worry about all that stuff spoiling unless you jump right in there and immediately start taking care of it. So that's why, canning and dehydrating are really great ways where you don't have to be dependent on power. And you can and dehydrate without having to use power. So, especially if you have a wood stove. Um, or some other my thing with meat when it comes to drying meat because of what it is, or eggs or dairy products, I wouldn't personally trust just doing that in open air. I'd worry about some of that if it's raw, some of that spoiling before I could get it fully dry. Now, with meats that have been cooked it probably, just depending on how fast you can get it to dry and, your climate, how humid it is, how hot it is, it might be fine, but in that case, I'm still going to resort to electricity as long as I'm able to. Now, again, for us, we have generators and we have solar power. This is why I do a lot of my dehydrating. Well, it's one of the reasons I do a lot of my dehydrating during the summer, late spring through early fall, because we typically have enough solar power. I can just plug my dehydrators into solar power and run it that way. Obviously, the other reason being that's when I'm harvesting the things I'm most likely to dehydrate. But as far as the rest of the year, like I don't grow ginger. I get it from Azure Standard. That's something that dries beautifully right next to my wood stove, as do mushrooms. And I'm always experimenting with other things there to see what will dry well next to the wood stove as long as I have fires going. But the meat definitely on top of the wood stove. So yeah, I just, like I said, I hate having to do it on top because of the space that it takes up when I do that. So let's see here. I want to see if I've covered all my major points. But I think that's it. So freezing is great, but the bad thing about freezing is you have to be dependent on electricity. You can without electricity as long as you can control whatever open fire you have. Like some people will can on rocket stoves, but I always use propane. And so I never can with electricity because I always do it outside on our deck with propane. Of course, you still have to depend on fuel to do that. No matter how you look at it, you're going to have some kind of fuel, whether it be public power or solar electricity or generator run electricity to keep your freezers going, to run your canners and your dehydrators, or you're going to have some kind of wood heat. That's still a type of fuel, or you're going to have propane or something. There has to be some kind of fuel. And now I've never used my solar oven to try to dehydrate anything with myself. I don't think here, and the kind of solar oven I have, I don't think the stuff would dry that well. But I don't need to do that because, well, if I'm getting that kind of sun, I can just run my electric dehydrators on the solar power. But I do know that Stacy has dehydrated things in her American, is it called what? Why am I American Sun Oven? There we go. And it seems like other people have told me they've dehydrated some things in their American Sun Oven. Again, here I don't think it would work as well, and also the solar oven we have, which has been good for plenty enough stuff. I've used it for quite a number of years, long before I heard of an American, the American Sun Oven, which is definitely more expensive than the one that I have. It's heavier. It's more narrow than mine's wider. Mine isn't made anymore. It's the Solar Vor. I like it because I can put a big casserole dish in there. I wouldn't be able to fit that in the American Sun Oven, but you can put smaller pots and you can stack them in the Sun Oven. So, but there's all kinds of different solar ovens out there, which, by the way, I didn't think to link to this, but I have a video I did a few years ago or a couple years ago on types of solar ovens where I did, based it just on what I know from the one I have, but also did a little research into a few different other types. So it's all going to be dependent on the person, where they live, and what's going to fit their pocketbook and what's going to work best for them. So I know the All American, I keep saying All American, the American Sun Oven, maybe it is All American Sun Oven. I don't know. I always say All American because my canner is an All American. But what was I going to say? I know that a lot of people have had a lot of good things to say about the American Sun Oven. I've never used it. I was going to initially, they tried to hook up with me. They contacted me, or I contacted them, one of the two. This was years ago. And they promised they were going to send me one. And I was all excited because I'd heard so many good things about it, and I wanted to compare it to the one I had. Never heard another word from them because right after that, they changed hands. And so when I finally reached out to them and said, "Hey, whatever happened to this? I was promised this, that, and the other thing." "Oh, we don't know what you're talking about." So after that, I completely lost interest in them. I just didn't even, I'm just like, whatever, whatever. But yeah, there's other ways of putting up meats that I didn't put down because they're not, mostly talking about what I do. But I know there's like salt curing is a really good way. There's smoking. And there's many other ways that you can put up meats that don't require electricity. Now, I know that my Patrick's grandparents, um, yeah, his grandma, when she was living in North Carolina, her way of putting up meat, well, they did a lot of pork. And so they would butcher a pig. She would, I don't know if she cooked the meat first or not. I'm assuming she cooked the meat first. She'd pack it into the jars and then she would take the lard and pour it over the jar, and the lard would seal in that meat. And she didn't have a pressure canner. So that's how she put it up. And that would get them through the year. That was just one of the many, well, one of the ways. I don't know how many other ways she might have used, but that is a method. So even if you don't eat pork, I would assume the same method could work with anything that produces tallow, beef, elk, venison. They don't have as much fat on them, though, usually as pork does, but I would assume you could use the same method to do that. But yeah, so there's other methods. Again, this was me just sharing from my own experience since I haven't done those other methods. I've done the dehydrating from a raw state, from the cooked and frozen state, from just the cooked state, like with the ground beef, and then canning. And to me, those three methods are great. But I might at some point try like a salt cure or something just to try it and see what I think. I would assume salt cured meat would be similar, though, in texture to meat that's been dehydrated, like jerky, where you marinate it and you dry it, over a fire, next to a fire, or in a dehydrator. So, anybody who's watching this in replay, please share in comments as well as in chat. The unfortunate thing about the live shows, if people watch them as soon as they're over, a lot of times the chat won't even show up until it's finished processing, which I find a little bit frustrating. I wish it would show up right away. I don't know why that is. And for whatever reason, just like how I keep getting cut off in my videos, for whatever reason, all of my videos now, it wasn't this way at first, but now all of my videos take all the rest of the day and all night. And I get up really early in the morning between 3 and 4. And by then, it's finally processed, and then I can remove the mid-roll ads and all that nonsense that's in there. Or, the mid-roll ads and then the comment, the chat will show up. But I do keep the chat public so it can show in the replay. It's just if you watch it before it's done processing on YouTube, it won't show up. So irritating. I see other people's, their chat shows up, but it's probably because it processes a lot faster. So I'm like, what's the deal? It's not my computer, it's not my internet, because it's on YouTube's end that it takes so long. So just like it, except for that one live show, was it last Sunday? Whenever it was, Wednesday, Sunday, when I got cut off, that was internet. That was the only one so far that was caused from my internet. The rest of them have been from YouTube that I've been getting cut off, just like this one here. So anyway, I'm going to stay in chat for a while, but I'm going to go ahead and do my closing in case I get cut off again, so I can make sure that gets into the video. I hate it when I don't have an intro and a closing when I go to take this video and turn it into a standalone video that's been edited down and narrowed down to the important information and videos and clips and photos added. So I'm going to go ahead and do my closing, but I'm going to stick around. So thank you all for coming. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and take care and God bless. Now, if you want to stick around and talk for a little bit longer, I'll stick around for a little bit longer and then we can go. I know that's weird. Just like in my show from on my main channel, I forgot to do my intro. So then when I was done, I had to do my intro and then my closing. So I got a closing. I got the intro and the closing right at the end of the show. How dumb. But it's because I forgot. But if I don't do it, then somewhere I'll get cut off and then I won't have it. And I don't want to go try to shoot it separately because it's always weird. It's always weird. So since I'm still just kind of hanging around and I got through my main subjects, let's see. I'm going to look for any questions. I've gone from 3 freezers to 1. I'd like to just, I'd, I'd, l- Linda, I am just a stumbling over your comment and you didn't say anything wrong. I'd like to get just to my fridge freezer. I think that sometimes, but we have a pretty good size freezer. And then we have another freezer, our old freezer, that we thought it had died. And so we bought the new one. It's actually been quite a number of years ago that we bought the new one. And we decided to, since by that point we were getting into food storage, wanting to put up more food, we got the biggest one we could fit in the hallway here. Moved the old one out to the deck, and we're going to try to figure out what we wanted to do with it, like maybe recycle it for something, bury it in the ground, use it for cold storage. But then Patrick did it sat out there for a while. Then Patrick did some messing around with it. He managed to get it working again, and it's been working ever since. So we stuck it out in the shop. So they're both full. Right now I have we just got our first delivered to a drop point order from Azure Standard this last week. So I got a bag of barley in there. I had to make some room for it because I had it pretty full. But thankfully, a lot of the stuff that was in there was ice packs. So what I do is I'll save enough ice packs to fill up all the gaps when I get my Misfits order or anything else I order, like maybe from Costco or wherever. And I've got ice packs, and I'll just fill up the gaps with ice packs. And that way it conserves the freezer energy. And I also have the ice packs if I ever, if we're going to go do a barbecue down there and I need to fill the cooler up, or maybe I need to use the cooler for something else, I can throw the ice packs in there. But then if I need the space, I just take the ice packs out. Usually anymore, I just throw them away because I end up with so many more coming in that I'll just, when I got space, I'll just top them off with more ice packs again with fresh ones. Sometimes they get holes in them anyway, and then they leak. So somebody asked, what did somebody ask? What causes the streaming issue that results? I wish I knew, Lavender and Linen. I wish I knew so I could stop it. It's not from my end. It's YouTube's end. I don't know. I know some other people have this issue, but I know plenty enough people that just they'll do 12-hour live shows. I'm not even kidding. 4 hours, 5 hours, not have any issue. When I first started doing these on here, I wasn't having issues like that. And I was going over 2 hours. I find that typically if I keep them shorter, I'm less likely to have that problem. But then again, I just started my other feed, and then I'd only been going for a few minutes and then it cut me off. I was just doing my chit chat, working up to getting into the main topic. So irritating. What's weird is they'll show me warning, we're trying to reconnect you, blah, blah, blah. And that's how I know I've been cut off. But it shows that I'm still live. That's why I always ask you guys, can you see or hear me? Because on my end, it still shows the little red live thing and says that I'm live. I don't get it. And I still have to end the stream because it's still saying that I'm live, even though you guys can't see or hear me anymore because and there's no getting it back up and going again. It's beyond frustrating. I've had my moments where I'm like, I should just stop doing the live shows because it's frustrating. But it's like, as long as you guys are willing to put up with it, I can still download, even if I have to do it in 2 parts, I can still download the separate parts, which this time I've got all my main topics all in the one live feed, but I can still download the 2 separate pieces and then still put them into one video and just splice them together. It's not a big deal because I do a lot of cutting and editing anyway. when I take these and download them and make them into a separate, shorter video for those who don't like lives and all the chit chat and whatnot. Linda had a question about vacuum sealing and Mylar for freezing. Um, you you can, there's a trick to it. Uh, I've seen people, I tried it when my stupid food saver was still sort of working. Maybe that's why it never worked, because it was already by that point kind of, nah, maybe I'll work, maybe I won't. But the thing with Mylar is Mylar's smooth. And so you can't just stick a Mylar most of the time. I don't know if they make some now that have a different type of opening to stick into, like a vacuum sealer, like a food saver. Where if you look at your food saver bags, excuse me, you look at your food saver bags and they're textured. I'm so sorry. And so that texture is to allow the air to be pulled out. It has to have a way for the air to come out. So that's what the texture of the bag is for. And then once it pulls the air out and vacuums it, then it seals it with heat. So with Mylar, you can't do that because there's no texture there, so it's flat, and so it just won't pull the air out. So here's the trick I've seen people do that I tried and failed at. Tried it several times. I thought I got it to work once, and then it didn't. But they'll take like a piece of a food saver bag, like just a little strip of it, and they'll put it in there at the end, so that when they close that down and it's vacuuming, it's got that little texture piece that allows the air to be sucked out, and then they seal it. But I just saw one video on it years ago, but it's really frustrating. It's super frustrating trying to get that little piece to stay in place, and then is it gonna properly seal, so that when I finally got it to work where it vacuum, when it went to seal, that was then where the problem was. Because you got to realize it's going through 2 layers of Mylar plus that plastic piece. And so it's got to be hot enough to seal it completely. And if you try to pull that little textured piece out, then you're going to lose the vacuum on it. So I don't know if somebody's perfected it, if they've come up with another method, but yeah, I tried it and maybe it was just me not being able to get it to work, but for me, it just wasn't worth it. So, yeah. So the same goes with vacuum sealing any dry goods into Mylar, you'd have the same issue. Now, with dry goods, at least you can throw it, if you get it, oxygen absorbers that actually work. There are some that do, and sometimes you get a bad package, like happened to me so many times. And I still have some sealed up oxygen absorbers that I hope are good. So if I ever do want to use them, I save them just in case, even though I hate them. But at least with dry foods, you can throw an oxygen absorber in there and then you seal up the Mylar. You can even just use like a straight iron, like you would for straightening your hair. That's what I've used. And then seal it up. And then the oxygen absorber will, just like it was vacuum sealed, it removes that oxygen and takes out all those air pockets. And then, yeah, it works. But here's the thing is um, you gotta make sure that whatever you're vacuum sealing in there, especially dried goods, into the Mylar, when it sucks that bag down against the goods, if it's got any sharp edges, it's going to poke holes in it. This will happen with the food saver bags. It'll happen with your Mylar bags. And then now you just lost your bag and you're going to have to start all over. So who is in who is in charge of butchering at your house? Um he I he does the major part of it. Lately, most of the butchering has happened at other people's houses. We haven't done it here in a long, long time. But like maybe we'll go help somebody, like they got an elk, we'll go help somebody butcher the elk at their house because they, uh, you know, well, we do have, I think we have a meat slicer now. We have a meat grinder now. We haven't had a chance to use it, but now at least we have one. But that's why we were doing some of this at other people's houses because they had all the proper equipment and we would help them and then we'd get a portion of the meat. So that's where a lot of our meat has come from. One time it was because our son hit an elk and it had to be put down. And so then my daughter-in-law's grandparents and us and and Patrick, they went and got it and they took it over to their house and they started butchering it up and then we went over there and helped. But and so, we oh, and then the guy that helped get the elk and bring it over. Oh, that's right. So one guy gathered the elk, he brought it over to their house, and then we and Kayla's grandparents did the butchering, and mostly the guys did all the really messy stuff where me and Carol, we did the wrapping and cutting and that kind of stuff. So at any rate, yeah. So I don't know if it would ever come to a point where when it would come to a point where we've got so much meat in our freezer right now. So and now that Patrick's father has passed away, I don't know when he'll go hunting again. He mostly did that with his dad. So hoping to get him out to start fishing again. I'd like to get more fish in my freezer because that's one thing we don't have as much of as I would like to have. Have a lot of beef, a lot of elk, a lot of venison, not enough fish. So as long yeah, thank you, Lucy. As long as you guys don't mind, I'll keep doing it. It frustrates the heck out of me and it makes me feel bad that we have to go through all this rigmarole, but at the same time, I enjoy it. I do actually enjoy sitting here and talking to you guys, um, and chatting with you and getting the immediate feedback. I do enjoy it, and I feel like it also gives you a chance to see me in my like this is how I would be if we were just sit down and talk and have a conversation together. Because what you see in my other videos is me cutting out the times I have to stop and clear my throat because my vocal cords are getting sore and all that's happening. Or, I mistake, I stutter. I stutter a lot. Because it's not a speech impediment. It's actually my brain trying to get too many thoughts out at once. And that's why I start stuttering. Or I just flat out forget what it was I was trying to say, or I spit all over the place. So if you were to visit me in person, you might get a shower. So maybe come with, wear a clear plastic bag over yourself if you don't want to get showered on. I just kidding. I'm not that bad. Let's see. I said that because I saw spit fly out of my mouth again. Yeah, all that stuff. I mean, there's nothing wrong with seeing the real me, but when I'm shooting videos to have them, and I want to keep them clean. I want to keep them as short as possible. Then I'm usually cutting all that stuff out just to keep it clear and concise. And also because I rabbit trail. And so I try to cut out the rabbit trails or I say something completely wrong and I'm like, that's not what I meant to say. So sometimes I have to add text in there so people know what I actually meant, or I just hack that part out altogether so I don't confuse people. Because some people just listen and they don't see. So if they don't see my edit, they'll be like, why did she, what? That doesn't even make sense what she just said. So yeah, I don't want to confuse the heck out of people. So, uh, oh, you finally found me. Yeah. Yeah. They cut me, Tyler, they cut me off before I even got into my topic. It's like, really? Couldn't even get into my doggone topic, but now my topic is done. So now I'm just filling up the air with sound and reading your chat. In my opinion, every person is my cousin. Well, cool. As long as you actually like me. Not everybody likes me, but not every we all have people that don't like us, right? It's matter of taste. But like I said before, you like me. You really like me. So nice, stupid little thing there. I just got back with Terry feeding the goats. You're feeding the goats now, or you got back from feeding the goats? Because it seems like it'd be hard for you to be in the chat while you're feeding goats, unless you're using your phone. I never have used my phone for chats, for live chats ever. I think that I would just, I have a heck of an, I have a hard enough time just trying to type into chats and not have like 50,000 typos. And if I was to try to do it on the phone, every word would be misspelled or completely wrong or auto-corrected. And I'd be mad. Being righteous is more about who your enemies are than who your friends are. Everyone, everyone doesn't have great taste. Well, thanks, Deb. I guess that means you guys have good taste. I hope. I hope that's what it means. Oh dear. Oh, my throat's starting to hurt. Darn it. I want to stay. I want to stay. I got my video that I shot earlier because I usually Sundays, I stand over there usually on Sundays, sometimes in the kitchen. And I have one video, it's got a pre-recorded video that I'll shoot over there in my little video shooting corner over there by the dehydrators. Well, it ended up being a pretty short video, surprisingly. And I'm not going to give away what it is this time, but it was surprisingly short. And by the time I got done editing it, it was only like 6.5 minutes. So I got it all done before I came onto this live, and it's already uploaded and ready to publish on YouTube. I still got to get it uploaded over to Rumble, but I had to get in here. And I decided I'd wait till after I was done on here, but that, it doesn't take a super long time. Yeah, you didn't get cut off. Yeah, it wasn't you, Renee. It was YouTube cutting off my original stream. So irritating. It happens at least once a week. I do like 3 live shows a week now, and it's going to happen to at least one of them every week or 2. Thankfully, the earlier one I didn't happen. I was surprised. Terry says to Heidi to make me believe, but it's not easy. Believe what? I'm sorry. Now I'm lost. Oh, we started feeding and ended with hoof trimming. Oh, behave. My goodness, my eyeballs. And before Tammy, just as Tammy was typing it, sending her thing to correct me, like, Heidi, you're being a moron. I realized it said behave. I looked a little closer. I'm like, why did I see that as believe? Ugh, my eyes. And these dumb LED ring lights, they don't help. I need to, I wonder if they make like a halogen type light like these. That's this style. Now I have some halogen, a halogen light I used to use in my kitchen before I got the ring lights. And I don't know what it is, but it's only when I'm in here that these lights bother me. And I don't know if it's because there's 2 of them or because I'm sitting here for so long. I tried, turning on some of my overhead lights and it helps them not. I like it. I like the way the background looks better without the overhead lights, but because all this stuff shows up better, but then everything else gets kind of yucky and it makes it even harder on my eyeballs with these on. If I don't have at least some of my overhead lights on. Ugh. But I think I'm gonna maybe see if they make some kind of standing, like light for recording videos that is not LED. They're nice because the way they work, they're really nice because of the ring light. You put your phone in the center of the ring light, so you get the light coming from all the way around. But I was doing the covers over them, but then I noticed it was more apt to make the photo look blurry. So see, I have a ring light. Glad I didn't pay much for it because I don't like them. Yeah, I don't. I like the ring. I don't like the fact they're LED. I wish I could get some that were like incandescent or halogen. But I'm guessing they wouldn't make halogen lights like that. I'm thinking they only make them in LED. But I do have a a halogen light, but only one. I just have to figure something out. I don't know. I'll keep playing with it as long as I keep doing my these lives, which again I do enjoy. I just hate the YouTube frustrations that I have. That's the only thing I don't like about them. Are the ring lights too hot to drape? No, I did drape. I don't know, maybe you missed it when I said I did make some linen covers that I was throwing over them because LED lights don't have any heat. They don't put off any heat. And these actually do make a nice looking light, but it was making the picture a little too dark and thus making it more blurry. So, and then kind of muting, I mean, the colors like of my red shirt, they already get muted enough by the webcam. And so usually when I do the standalone video, I do brighten the picture up and the color to get it to look like it should look in real life. And that does help, but yeah, I think we might still have some just regular incandescent light bulbs because when we originally changed everything out to LED, it was all about saving money and being able to run things off solar power year round, not knowing then the issue it was going to cause to our eyes. So I should go pull out our old incandescent bulbs and at least use them in some things. But at any rate, yeah. I kinda think that's why over the past several years, my vision quickly started going downhill because it just seemed like it was a sudden like going along just fine, never needed glasses, and all of a sudden of course, age has something to say for that, so I'm gonna be 59 in a couple more weeks, um, obviously, but I do think that the LED lights definitely have contributed that and then all the video editing and staring at the screen. Once I stopped doing the editing, like, right at my laptop and then hooked my laptop up to a big TV screen and then sat across the room from it, massive difference. So a lot of it has to do with even how close you are to those lights. The closer you are to them, like you're staring at your phones and whatnot, that's a lot harder on your eyes than an LED light that's across the room or even, fluorescent. So, speaking of, we got so many lights that are out. I have five rows, and each row there's four sets of fluorescent lights, and there's a good amount of them. The bulbs that are out, we need to get new ones in here. It's just not hasn't been that important because we hardly ever use those. So if we're doing dinners in here, I don't turn those on. I hate having them on. It's just too cold. So I have lamps all over, like back there. You'll see there's a lamp up there, there's a lamp right there. I have, these lights like these LED, these are LED too, these lanterns. I'll have those on the table. But I have lights lamps all around, so it's a more cozy feel when we're hanging out in here, having a game night, dinner, or whatever. So I only use the overhead lights when I'm shooting videos, or if I'm just walking through here real quick and I need to go back to my fabric room and find something. And sometimes even then, I don't turn them on. I usually I have other lights I can just flip on back here. So, but yeah, I know we have a box of incandescents. I wonder if they're still good. That they were still good when we replaced them years ago. So we thought, let's save these in case we ever need them. And I keep forgetting about them, so I should pull them out and see if I can at least replace. The problem is any of the lights that I would use like for a long term, like mostly are not lights that I would be able to use those in. So, okay, anyway, I should probably get going. Yeah, I really don't like fluorescence. I mean, doing fluorescence in here was important because of the type of room it was. Being it was a big business room, it's a studio. Fluorescents are going to be cheaper, easier in the long run to just do that. And so that's why there's all these fluorescent lights in here because of it being a studio. If I was to have all those be incandescents, that would be a lot of electricity to run them. So tell Terry it's a big job she has, LOL. It is. Poor Terry, trying to keep Tyler in line. LED lights powered by AC actually turn on and off very fast, right? It's interesting how you'll see that, like, in videos, you can see that, the flashing. So you think, "Man, how no wonder it's so hard on our eyes because it's constantly doing this." You can still buy incandescents from Amazon. I was looking around and I saw some that look like the Edison bulbs or the old-fashioned one that said they were incandescent, and I'm like I was actually looking for halogen lights, and I pulled those up. I'm like, "Those are cool. Are they actually incandescents, or are they just saying they're incandescents and they're not?" Because they were kind of expensive for what they were. I'm like, incandescent lights used to be super cheap, and it was the LEDs that were really expensive. So that's why I'm like, I mean, they look cool. Maybe that's why they're so expensive. It's because of the style of them. But I was thinking those would be cool in my like in our bathrooms, in the lights overhead, and then in the fan, the ceiling fan over our table. Those would look cool in those. So anyway, yeah, expensive. Yeah, they're expensive because they quit making them. That's kinda what I was wondering, Lucy, if it was that or if it was because of the style. So, I didn't know when we if I had known what I know now about LEDs and all that, I probably would never have done that. I would have just stocked up on incandescents. So, very frustrating. I do have to say I appreciate having LEDs for my string lights, though, because incandescent string lights do not last long where LEDs last forever. So, up here, I only have to change them out maybe once every 10 years. That's nice. If that. Um, still can what? I'm sorry. I kind of keep getting lost or I read something wrong. It's hard to say what will happen. I kind of doubt they will come back, but then again, maybe there's a possibility when they realize just how detrimental the LEDs are. I was watching, I don't know if any of you follow Dr. Sam Bailey. I follow her, but I don't have a lot of time to watch her videos. But I seen she put one out about LED lights, and so I did watch that one. And that they use mostly halogen lights. So I know you can get halogen lights that aren't necessarily because I always think of halogen lights of being the kind that you'd use as a spotlight, but apparently you can get some that aren't necessarily spotlight type lights. So I was trying to look around for something like that. But yeah, Dr. Sam Bailey, she's out of New Zealand. I recommend her channel. She's another more she's a doctor, but she's more kinda got a more natural viewpoint on things, and she has just a really sweet demeanor, and she's also has a good sense of humor as well. She seems like a super sweet lady, but, when I have time, I do try to watch some of her content, but, I just don't have time. I get people that send me videos and books, and unfortunately, I just don't have a lot of time for all that, and I don't do a lot of even though I love to read, I used to read a lot of books. I don't have the time to sit and read like I once did, so I get people that send me books. Are ones I'd be interested, some I'm not interested in, and I feel kinda bad because I have all these books that people send me, and I just don't have time to read them, and then people that send me videos on stuff, unless it's something I'm specifically needing to research right then, I usually don't have time for that. But, there are some that have been very useful, and I do appreciate it, but, 60 watts Edison incandescent bulbs, 22.99 for 6. I think those are the ones I was looking at. They look really cool. Well, I think I saw some no, I think those are the ones I was looking at. That sounds right. Seems like I was thinking $23 for 6 of them. I'd like to know how long they last. Are they still gonna last as long as the cheap incandescents that we used to buy years ago out of the store where you could buy like a 4-pack for a buck? Remember that? A 4-pack for a buck. Yeah, it's not a normal light bulb, but what I'm wondering is if it's actually incandescent. They say they're incandescent. I think they are. It seems like they are. It says they are. So maybe, but I don't trust anything anymore. What was I going to say? Something about, oh, eggs. So my daughter-in-law comes in the other day. She goes, I went to buy eggs and they're $12 a dozen here. I'm like, I thought the price of eggs was going down. So right now in our area, the cost of eggs in the store is $1 a piece. And if you buy the 5 dozen box, they're $50 for the 5 dozen. It's a little bit cheaper. But the funny thing is my daughter-in-law said that, so she ended up, they had the 6-pack, the half dozen ones for $2.99. She goes, so I bought 2 of those. I'm like, why would those, why would you, that's weird. Why would they have those marked at $2.99 where the dozen is $12? Uh, Huh? I'm like, well, you went the smart way. So that there's that thing again. So just because something's in bulk doesn't mean it's a better price. Always do your math. Always compare the math. Like the bulk, the 5 dozen eggs for 49 whatever, we'll just say $50 is definitely cheaper than paying $12 a dozen. Because now you're only paying $10 a dozen, but you're at a better price getting a half dozen and just buying a bunch of those. Now, I don't know why that would be. I don't know if it's just like, okay, well, that was the last time they got them for that price, but let's see. We pay $4 a dozen for farm raised local eggs. I charge $6. I remember feeling kind of bad a few years ago when I had to raise it up to 6, but that was to help counteract the cost of feed. Well, now we found a non-GMO organic feed that was less than what I was paying before, and I'm keeping them at 6, but I'm not going to up the price to 12 just because that's what they are in the store. So as long as I can sell enough eggs at that cost to pay for our feed and still have plenty of eggs for us, I'm good. And that's kind of where I'm looking at. Were the eggs smaller? I don't know, Rebecca. But here's something I learned about smaller eggs. Just because eggs are smaller doesn't mean they have less nutrition. So you might not be getting as much substance in a smaller egg, but you're getting at least as much nutrition in a smaller egg. So now I don't worry so much about I got hens laying different size eggs, especially when they first start laying and they're smaller. Well, those smaller eggs are just as nutritious as the bigger eggs. And that's what matters is the nutrition you're getting out of them, not the substance, the amount. So I still try to make sure I get some, like if I have some really like somebody laid a massive egg the other day, I'll put that one in there and I have a couple smaller and then like average size ones when I'm selling them to people. Or I just try to keep all the smaller ones to myself. So I don't want people to ever feel cheated. But I only have a couple people I sell to right now. The eggs are labeled large and they look like robin eggs. Oh my goodness, really? Yeah, I don't know the size of the eggs. She didn't say. I'm assuming they're just average size. So I haven't bought eggs in the store in so long, so I don't know. I mean, ever since we've had chickens, I haven't had to buy eggs. And so it'll coming up on 8 years, which I still have 3 of my original chickens left. And I want to see if they're going to lay again this year. I started off with 7 Buff Orpingtons, and over the last couple of years, we had to take some of them out. They died on their own. They were just getting old, and I have 3 more left, and they haven't started laying yet. I didn't expect them to right away. If they do, I'm not even sure that they will because they're in their 8th year. But I want to see. I'm really curious to see if they'll start laying, and I'm watching them, and they're starting to look pretty good. Minnie Pearl's the only one that doesn't look super great, but she's the one that shakes all the time. I mean, she looks old. But even her comb and wattles are getting more red, and she's looking healthier. but especially the other 2, Claire and Kicking Bird, look really good. I'm thinking Kicking Bird's gonna start laying any time here. I'm hoping so. That would be cool to get 1 more year out of them at least. I know that Buff Orpingtons can live up to 10 years, but I don't know that they will lay clear up until that time. So, but Lavender and Luna says my longest living hens were 10 years old and they were still laying. Very cool. I know eventually they'll just run out of eggs though. They only got so many eggs in them that they can produce. But I have this chicken that's only not even quite 2 years, and she stopped laying last year. She might only be a year and a half, and I still haven't she stopped laying in the summer, and she's young, and she was only laying, like, once every few days, and she still has yet to start laying. And if she doesn't start laying soon, we're gonna have to take her out. I feel kinda bad. She's a mix. I don't know what all's in her, but she lays an olive green egg. But I got a chick out of her, and that hen, she's the one I named Guinevere. She's mostly browns because she's colored more after Antonio, and she's got the same poof on top of her head like her mom, but her mom's all black. But Guinevere, she's really beautiful, and she lays an olive green egg, and she's a good layer. So at least I got a good layer from her. So even if I do have to take Roxy out, which I'm thinking I'm gonna have to do, it makes me sad, but because she didn't live a very long life, but at least if we take her out now, her meat will be a little more tender. I don't know why she just stopped laying, never started again. And every now and then, like I saw her today in the nesting box again, but she never leaves anything behind. It's like she thinks she's going to lay an egg. And she's been doing this for months and months and months. It's weird. Anyway, I really should get off here. The sun is shining again. Maybe I can run out and do some more stuff. I did dig up some more stinging nettle. I still have a little more stinging nettle to dig up and thin it back a little bit to get ready for planting my potatoes. Oh, and I did a lot of cleanup in my greenhouse as far as the pots go. Got them all filled and ready for planting. And like I said earlier, in the one that got cut off, um, I don't have tomatoes popping up yet, but it's too early. They should start coming up within this next week. But my peppers are coming up, and all the herbs I planted inside in my windowsill with those little long pots, they're coming up. Except for, well, not my echinacea, not that. And but then I got a whole bunch of pots all ready in the greenhouse to take when my tomatoes and peppers get big enough and I move them out there. I have pots to put them in. Oh, and also the herbs. Then I also start my corn out there. So I'm still debating on the corn, if I'm gonna grow corn this year or not. I might, but I definitely want to try growing just to try it to see how well it will do that einkorn wheat and see if that does well. Then we'll know if I can get a little bit of it to do well in my back garden. Then I know that if it really came down to it and we wanted to start growing our own wheat, we could do that at the other piece of property just right down the road. We have enough space there. We can till up a big section and start growing wheat, and I think maybe get enough for us. Maybe, I'm not really sure. Not I should look up and see how much acreage you need or square footage of wheat growing you need for for 2 people for a year, because I'm really not sure. Brandy, I wondered if maybe something went wrong in there, but I think if that was the case, then she would be getting bound eggs, and she doesn't have bound eggs. Otherwise, she would have died a long time ago. But thoughts like that have occurred to me. It's almost like she just didn't have enough eggs in her, is what I keep wondering. So, when she stopped laying in the summer, I kept checking her. I thinking maybe she's bound. Maybe no, there's nothing in there. So if we do end up butchering her, I'll find out. I'll be able to see whether or not, if she still has little eggs in there at all, then I know that she was still producing. But if there's nothing in there, then that means she only had, like, she just didn't have very many eggs in her. But her body is telling her that, well, this time of year you're supposed to be laying eggs, but nothing's coming out. So it's kind of weird, but who knows? I mean, weird things happen. but at least her offspring is laying well and doing quite well, other than the fact that she's the one most likely to escape out of my front yard, and it makes me mad. Neighbor had to come over and tell me, "Your chicken's over here under your apple tree." I'm like, "What the heck?" So I had to shoo her back. Anyway, irritating. But she's other than that, she's a good hen. She's pretty. She lays pretty eggs, the olive green, and she's a good layer. So anyway, for reals, people, I need to get off of here and stop rambling. But I guess it's just because they've decided to bless me with being able to stay on here for over an hour. So I did. Anyway, I do need to get going. So thank you all for coming in, for even though it took some of you a while to find my second stream from being cut off the last time. Thank you for finding it, for going the extra mile, finding it and popping in. And just remember, if you missed a bunch of this, if you don't want to go watch the replay, I will be making this into the main topic into a standalone video that will go up on my other channel, my main channel. So hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great week, and take care and God bless. Love ya.